listened to a podcast before? 1, 2, 3. And who has been in the audience of a podcast before? Nobody? Okay, welcome. And we are live. Everyone can hear me chatting it up. Okay. So today is May 4th, 2023. This is season 4, episode 1 of the War Cry podcast. Our intent today is to talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women and people art. And this includes an artist talk. This topic can be sensitive and triggering, and we are live streaming today from the MMIW symposium hosted by Yakama Nation at the Legends Casino in Toppenish, Washington, on the Yakama Reservation. So again, welcome to this episode of the War Cry podcast, including anybody streaming in, listening on any of the streaming networks, or in our live audience today. We are an all native run podcast discussing data, events, stories, issues, and historical connections about Northwest missing and murdered natives. We are located on the Yakama Reservation. Thank you for joining us for this episode. My name is Emily Washings, and co-hosts today are Robin Piwashi and Patricia Whitefoot, and our guest today is Lee Sekakoktua. For announcements, we do have another season beginning, and we still are accepting stories of MMIP, MMIW. If you're a family member or a loved one and you would like to share their story, we are accepting that, and you can send us message online or through our email, which is warcrypodcast@gmail.com. And from there, we'll go ahead and start right into it. We're going to review some of the art first, starting with our War Cry logo, which is on my t-shirt. And I wanted to just have this be, for those of you that haven't listened to our podcast before, I wanted to talk, or we wanted to talk as if we were in a diner and you were kind of overhearing our conversation. We wanted it to be very conversational element and aspects to it. We have it very lightly scripted because we want to hear from people. We want people to be, I don't want to say fly on the wall, but like you're at the next table and you're like, what are they talking about? What is that? Because I found myself so many times on the tribe doing that to Patsy, that's why. So when we review this art, we're going to look at like, why did we choose this particular art piece? Like, we're going to explain what we thought when we saw it or how we found it. So we'll start with our War Cry logo. It is a woman wearing a traditional regalia of the Yakama people, and other Northwest people also wear this wing dress. It's red. She also has beadwork on with roses, and she has her hand over her heart. This is a very standard way that you would see a lot of Yakama people during particular times and ceremonies. And behind her is a weapon that was used against our people after we reported our first MMIWG case at the Yakama Nation in 1855, which is a howitzer. This is done by artist John Olney Schellenberger. He's a Yakama enrolled member, and he also is owner of Native Anthro. So he sells the shirts on his site, but the proceeds go to our podcast to support our work. And I had asked him for this piece because we were talking about this podcast and we needed art. And I had just gave the general direction that I wanted it to be a Yakama woman, and I wanted a howitzer in there because I felt like this is an important piece of our history, and anything that we're talking about in present day, we always reflect back. You know, we don't forget about that. And since the federal government has never adequately responded to that 1855 case, or Yakama's first case, it's like we always want that present and with our heart. And we wanted her in front of it because everybody that went through that time period, all those Yakama families did so that we could be here today. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on it, but I'm gonna, I realize usually when we're on Zoom, we start with Robin. So I went a little bit out of order here, Robin. We're out of practice. So usually we start with our youngest on the first impressions. So the next piece will be doing that after I do a light intro of it. So my bad on that. I got excited about our talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Robin Kibishi, and I'm an enrolled Yakima tribal member. I'm also part Comanche. I want to thank you all for being here. It's been a long time in the making. I know that once COVID restrictions had lifted up, we as a podcast had found it was a bit harder to come together and do episodes because we all are workaholics and we all try to catch up on everything we weren't able to do. So last year it was filled with committee meetings, well, especially for Patsy. So committee meetings and other conferences, things that started opening up is kind of where we wanted to go. So I thought it was a great idea to also integrate what we're doing at all these conferences and might as well just have a podcast there because we're all present. So we have that. And also if any of you are on Facebook or anything like that, we are live streaming, and if you have the ability, please like share it and share it with your friends and say, hey, I'm here, I'm watching this, or something like that. Let's see. I feel privileged to be able to bring forth some of the artists that we're able to discuss here. What I really like about it is that I know them and they're part of our community, which is a really big deal when it comes to our podcast, which is we want to be able to have people that we know, people that we do know represent our community and share their voice and what they're doing and the efforts that they're making. Thank you. Patsy.
Shikpachwe, English Winnix Wapet, Ku Wiki, Patricia Whitefoot. Good afternoon. I'm sure my Indian name is Wapet. My English name is Patricia Whitefoot, and like the two other hosts here, I am the elder host, and of course a citizen of the Yakima Nation. I'm also a Titan from Klickitat, Skimpa, Spokane, and Dene. And I share that background because as a teacher educator, it's something that I worked with my students on, particularly at the middle school level, to begin knowing about your identity. And that's important for all of us to know our identity and who we are, where we come from, and who are we interrelated with in one way or another. This particular topic is dear to my heart because I have had not only a sister who's been missing for over 30 years, but also very close relatives who've been murdered as well on or near the Yakima Reservation. Probably about a half a dozen very close relatives that were young women who've been murdered. And so I go back to my sister when she was very young. Art was important to her, as well as writing and poetry. And so I think about, her artwork that she did along with another sister. Some of you may have known her. My sister was Daisy Mayhew, and my sister is Beverly Tallman. They both were artists. And after my sister was missing, of course, we went through her items, but we knew because we all lived together that, they had, that artistic background. And so when I think about that, plus her writing that she did, it just touches my heart. And so when I see the artistic nature of our young children, because I've been in the classroom, and also just our people in general, it's very heartwarming for me to see all the artwork, whether it's through beadwork or whether it's through drawing, writing, especially, and then just conversations with one another and the kind of wear the regalia that we have as well. And I'm so proud to be wearing my skirt that my niece Melissa Benini made for me. She's gifted it to me not too long ago, and I don't know if you can all see it, but hold that aside for me.
Let's get the chair back.
I can stand on the chair.
Oh, yeah.
Then we'll have to have first aid. anyhow, she gifted this to me not too long ago after part of my sister's remains were found. But because we are all a part of the Tompkins Creek Longhouse in White Swan, you know, we're always sewing as grandmother sewing, but also, I'm also one of the elders with our Lama, our swan dancers, and the mothers, the grandmothers, aunties are constantly sewing for the young girls. And anytime you have children, grandchildren, we're all sewing in one way or another, making wing dresses, making their moccasins, sewing moccasins and all of that. So all of our heart goes into that and the love that we have for one another. And that's how I see our artwork as well, as the love and the good feelings that people have, you know, are shown in their art. So look forward to our conversation.
Do you want to share any impressions about the logo?
Oh, yes, thank you for asking. So she asked if I would share impressions about the logo. I live in White Swan, just about maybe 4 or 5 miles away from Fort Simcoe. And as I shared earlier, as an educator, I'm always doing teacher training. So training teachers, usually non-native teachers, about the history of the Yakama Nation. And with the logo, you know, and the fact that, you know, it depicts the equipment that is at Fort Simcoe, and Fort Simcoe being not only a military station for the United States government, but it later became a boarding school, as we know. And then after that, the Yakama Indian Agency, and today it stands as a park. So when you see this logo, for me, when I first saw it, I thought, oh my gosh, you know, just that machinery in the background is, you know, just gave me nothing but fear, because it makes me think about, you know, the elders, the ancestors that were a part of this. And part of my own family history was, so I grew up in Medicine Valley as a very young child, and it was a very safe place, but not knowing that my grandmother had been a part of this military school, I began to experience some of those issues by being with a military boarding school. And so some of those issues that I encountered, I will share a little bit more about that later. But you know, this artwork reminded me of the terror our people must have felt, because I was, as a young child, always to not say that I was Klickitat, and I didn't understand why until I became older and began researching, you know, the fact that the Klickitat people were at war with you know, the Washington Territory and the US government. And so, and knowing about the impact of wars on our communities is a part of our life as well. It's a part of our life, defending our homelands, defending our way of life, and defending who we are as a people when the government came in and started making treaties. And so we have to remember that where we are today, to me, it is about violence in our community. So for me, when I look at this, it portrays, you know, this background of violence, but also the fact that we are still here today with the woman, you know, that depicting that we still are standing. And for me, because I think of our swan dancers and the fact that we share our women's warrior song, we're still standing. Thank you.
Okay. And we have our next artist, which is Trevor Braden and Garrett Mespley. And there is a Facebook video that was done by Yakama Nation Review that we will share a link out in our show notes for. But we did get an artist statement from Trevor. He could not be here with us today, but I'll read that out. Okay, so this mural is No More Stolen Sisters. Trevor said, "Me and Garrett were very proud to be selected to do the mural. We are glad that it could help spread the message to people passing by either the highway or stopping at the store. Our hopes for people receiving the message were to spread awareness to the movement and show beauty and strength. the silhouettes to show there are many missing cases. And we made aside for the men and boys as well. We clicked that one. And we made aside for the men and boys to bring light to those missing cases. He also had an additional note and a need from the community. He said that there are people that have been writing on the mural and that he's had to go and paint over those before. And he thinks that that's largely a result of people wanting to come and have an express a way of their personal loss or a specific MMIP case. But it's defacing the art. But he does recognize that there is a need for community to be able to express when they have a missing loved one or an ongoing case or just this emptiness that's left as a result of violence. And I'll turn it to Robin because I'm remembering to ask her for her impressions.
Thank you. I have a few pictures of my daughter in front of this artwork. Those of you who are in the audience today have probably seen it. And one thing I could say about this community members, they're always open to do other projects and to depict what the family is asking for. I think when they first started out, my sister had asked him to do porcupine, and that was to represent my nephew because that was his Indian name and that was his Yakama name. And so that picture, that painting really became important to our family later on down the line. So I have a lot of respect for this artist. I also know that they had painted a lot of the local windows of different, I know the behavioral health had them do it. And it just shows like pictures of family, pictures of health, things like that. So I really enjoy seeing what this artist brings out into the community. So I always look forward to seeing them.
Well, I've known and seen some of their artwork for a while, but I didn't know that they could do murals until it was up. And so I agree that I think it's a strong representation, especially considering where it's at, that you're on the highway and you can see by. And I also recognize and see that whether it's a community member that's lost somebody or is uncertain, or it's even these fancy people from Washington, DC that are coming in, they all kind of gravitate towards it. And I think that's such a powerful message and visual representation of what we're going through, this crisis that we've been going through. And I'm really happy that these artists were able to depict this crisis in this way so that we could have almost a place to go, even if just for a few minutes, moments.
So one of the murals that we have here is the one on No More Stolen Sisters. So I happened to be in Washington, DC, and was with some of our congressional representatives. And this was during a meeting with the National Congress of American Indians, which is representative of many of the tribes throughout the United States that convene during the winter session, usually in February or March, depending on whether Congress is meeting or not at that time. And it's usually about a week-long gathering. So I just happened to be attending a luncheon with a friend. It's a women's luncheon where Native women are honored. And during this luncheon, Senator Maria Cantwell was attending the gathering and this luncheon honoring the women. And she pulled out this newspaper, or she had this enlarged photo of the front page that occurred in the Yakima Herald, the one that has No More Stolen Sisters. And she shared it with the entire audience that happened to be there, and I was just struck by it because I hadn't seen it. I'm not in Toppenish every day, so I wasn't aware that it was going on, but when I saw it, it was just so beautiful to be able to see it, and then, sad to think that, this is something that you would have shared in a meeting, with the tribal leaders, but also with some of the White House representatives that were there. Happy that we have young people that have this talent and are gifted, but sad at the same time that we would have this message that would be going out. And so, and I think throughout, my own personal experience as a family member, you go through all of these emotions, various emotions at different times. And it's like when we're talking, on the podcast, it's the same thing that occurs when we're either in a podcast or we're doing a workshop, which we did in the Tri-Cities not too long ago. So all of these, I'm feeling all of these emotions, I think, because I'm so deeply connected to it, and it'll remind me of a story. And so just by seeing this, it took me back to Senator Maria Cantwell sharing this, and just being on public display. And it's sad that we have to have this discussion, but I'm also glad that we're educating the non-native population as well. Just this morning, I was telling the ladies when I got here that Senator Marie is asking for resources so that she could share it on her website as well. So I did, of course, give her the podcast website as well, so that they have it available. And so it's all about educating Congress, because we wouldn't have the kind of resources, for instance, for the Yakama Nation behavioral health, or for the Yakama Nation to be able to have some of the services and programs that they have. It's not only the behavioral health, but it's tribal law enforcement. They are, they have then access to these additional resources to address some of the issues that we're facing along with the missing and murdered Indigenous women and people's crisis. It covers many sectors of our community, not just behavioral health or law enforcement, but others as well. And there's also integrated programs, for instance, with the Yakama women's, YWCA and Yakama. So we're all working together with one another, trying to support one another, but also working to, to ensure that action is being taken on violence. Just to me, it's about violence in general, violence in our community, violence in our family, violence in the workforce. Is something that I think we all need to be paying attention to. Thank you.
Yeah, so again, this is done by Trevor Braden, who is from the Grand Round tribe, as well as Garrett Mestley, who is Umatilla. And of course, they do have connections to us here on the Yakama Reservation. And this these murals, if you're not aware, are at Yakama. So they coordinated a level of an effort with Yakama and Joel John, I believe. Our next piece is, I feel like a museum tour person right now. If you'll come over here to our right, you see, that's all right. Our next artist is Malin Wilbur Foster. Malin, am I pronouncing that correctly? Malin, okay. Malin Wilbur Foster is a Salish artist from the Squaxin Island and Skokomish nations and is an MMIWP family member. This art is done on the 2022 interim report for Washington State Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's and People Task Force. Robin?
I don't have too much to say, but that it's just very capturing, and it's I feel like it definitely represents kind of the west side, like very It's not, doesn't have exactly like a lot of coastal designs, but it has a lot of their imagery, like out of wood and cedar in their masks. And it definitely kind of shows the unfortunate mass number of MMIP. And so I felt like it was a great representation. And behind a really great effort and movement to, for one, gather data, talk to families in honor requests that came out of this report. So I feel like that's all I have on that.
I'm kind of with Robin. I feel like I'm still in intake mode on this piece. I do believe that whenever we have topics that are really big and important and ongoing and invoke so much emotion, that it helps to have art with that. When I first saw this report, I just thought that that piece fits there. It fits. And I think that's the power of artistic expression. That's the power of combining art and policy. And so I'll leave it there and turn it over to a task force member, Patricia.
So I am a part of the Washington State Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Task Force that works within the agency of the Attorney General. And Malin is a family member who participates in the subcommittee, the family subcommittee. There are 5 subcommittees, and anyone can join these subcommittees. There's a variety of people that participate in these subcommittees. One includes the family subcommittee, which I'm a part of, and there's community resources subcommittee, and there are some of the individuals involved in support services and counseling type programs. There's also a law enforcement subcommittee, usually law enforcement folks, prosecutors, public defenders, of course, police and attorneys. That's pretty heavy with all of these law enforcement people, but it's well attended. And then in addition to that, we have a research and data committee, and Robin participates in that particular subcommittee along with Lucy Smartlot, who also participates in that committee as well. And then we have an executive committee, which I've been asked to participate in as a representing families. So Malin participates as a family member, and she has continued to be a very strong advocate about addressing what happens when your child or family member is murdered. And so she participates in law enforcement committee. She participates in the family subcommittee meeting, and she is a very strong advocate. And during the meetings, of course, like particularly family members, you know, may evoke strong emotions sometimes, and I've caught myself doing that. And I recognize that we're in these subcommittee meetings, but sometimes when you're reliving some of these experiences, it can be challenging. And so as we were preparing for the report, Malin volunteered her artwork. And so as a result of that, she's the one that produced this. And she has that strong background with her tribe, the Squaxin Island tribe and the Skokomi tribe as well. And so we know that this is from coastal art. And having lived in that area of the state of Washington, where many of our relatives may live also in the coastal area, you know, you begin to represent or begin to see their artwork and understand the representation that it comes from. But at the same time, I think also about the natural environment of their work. We're all here in the Northwest, we're all part of the river and waterways. We're next to the ocean. We have the Columbia River Basin. So there's a lot of links and interconnections to the river, the water, the ocean, the salmon, and all the seafood and those kinds of things, plus the mountains, Mount Baker, Mount Tahoma or Rainier and all of that. And the trees, there's so much that we're so interrelated with one another. And it's just a matter of just distinguishing what those fine points may be. And so for Malin to create this, it makes me think because of the way that the lips are, in like an O, and it almost reminds me of Hopi work too, because I've got grandchildren that are descendants of Hopi as well. And so, all of these thoughts go through me. And so, yeah, for me, it's about voicing. That's how I view it, but I've not really asked Malin because we all meet on Zoom too. We're not all face to face. And so that's my interpretation. And we can all interpret it different ways. And again, because say, for instance, our background, this is my experience in living, with tribes from the coast, but also teaching in the Southwest and, Ganado, Arizona, the public school, and teaching college levels too. So you gather all of these life experiences that one has, and you begin to understand the uniqueness and the distinctiveness of each tribe and the nuances that are part of their beautiful artwork.
Thank you. Our next artist was planning to be here in person with us, but unfortunately had an event come up where they were not able to attend. Lorelei Kruger is Yakima, and she also has a business called Lucky Arrow Creations. And she sells these modern Yakima warrior woman and her mate. I think one of her Facebook posts had said, after years, I finally made her a mate. So the warrior got to get a mate with her. So I think that what I recall from Lorelei saying on different posts is that she didn't intend to create this so necessarily to speak to the MMIW, MMIP movement, but she continued to see people wear them on marches and request them for that purpose. And I think it's just such a powerful image. I have this in a t-shirt form, and I'm not sure, did she give us an artist statement? No, okay. So she does have her Lucky Arrow Creations page, as well as ongoing art and collaborations with different places. And I'll turn it over to Robin.
I know that she also makes a lot of earrings and things like that, and they're all really cool, and I like looking at them, but it's always cool and fun to see like new interpretations of art and traditional art come from Indigenous people, which I'm excited once we get to leave, we get to see all of the really modern depictions and integrations of pop culture and like the MMIP movement, as well as other movements that are important to younger generation of artists that are coming up. But this is definitely a good example, and I like it because when I see it, I know exactly who made it, and I know what it represents. And so I just feel like it's very bold. Like I just like the colors. It's black, white, red, and so that really represents the MMAP movement, as well as just modern art, which I've noticed sometimes tends to be not always like someone trying to achieve like fine art, but just like art that speaks to people. And sometimes that's like my nieces and nephews, they do a lot of like kawaii art. It's like a Japanese kind of like cuter depiction, like it's like kawaii being like cute, meaning cute in Japanese. Where it's just like more of a cute image of that represents people or something, but it also appeals to kind of like a younger audience. And so this reminds me of it a little bit, because they're like it's like a cute image, but it's also very powerful. So that's what I like about it.
I just thinking about some of Lorelei's work that I've purchased over time, but just thinking about the depiction of the young lady here, to me looks like she's bold. She looks very bold to me and very courageous, and that's, what I see in art as well. What is it stating here? And for like Malin's drawing that she did, to me, it was like very bold, whatever, her interpretation is of it.
Yeah, so I think Lorelei has this in print form, t-shirt form, and possibly shoe form. Those are, of course, dependent upon availability. I remember when she first had this out, I kept trying to buy it at different vending spaces, and she'd sell out right before I got there. It's like, I shouldn't have went and got the cookies first. I should have went and got the shirt first, but I am a little bit of a cookie monster, for those of you that are not aware. And even though we both live on the Yakima Reservation, I finally ended up finding out she would be selling at the Wanapum Museum up in Priest Rapids. And I told my husband, I was like, we're going to that vending market because Lorelei's there. And in his mind, it didn't line up and make sense. And I was like, no, we're going because I'm gonna get my shirt. She has it reserved. And so we took that trek across the Columbia River. So I think that's another aspect of this art. I think when you find something that really you gravitate towards, or possibly like really want to see, it creates that in you. And I waited to buy the Huckleberry Pie until after I had the shirt on. So again, we are live streaming, and our producer Robin is checking for questions. We will have an artist introducing themselves next and sharing some of their art, and we're going to turn that over to them at this time. And I haven't ever actually, I don't know if I've met Lee in person. We've been on Zoom in the box. So this is Lee Sekekwakiwa, and he is the composer of the War Cry podcast theme music that you hear. And I'll turn it over for a longer introduction and showing and sharing art.
So just so you know, I did put a few of the pieces after this as well. So you're welcome to speak about a piece or after your introduction, however you want to do it.
I'm kind of the only one here without any script or anything. My name is Lee Sekekwakiwa. I am a Yakima Navajo Hopi artist. I'm enrolled Yakima. These are some of the pieces most recently that I've done for MMIW. I got first introduced to this with the young gal who was running with the red mark on her face. Was it Rosalie Fisher? And ever since then, it's just kind of been a worrying topic for me. In my generation, I have a lot of sisters, a lot of sisters. I have a lot of aunties. I've had a lot of grandmas. And so like, this has just been an issue for me, like worrying, just like, luckily I have not had anyone close to me be a victim, but it's always just a weight. And so here on this larger image, I have my stepniece. She was my model for this piece, and I really don't know how we want to go about this. Do you guys have questions or?
Like cutout doll.
So the cutout doll pieces are pretty much what they represent as the cutout dolls. Women, so like growing up, we didn't have any toys, and like even in most cultures, like what we do is we play with dolls, we make our own dolls. And so this was a kind of like a weird, like circle back to a culture that I wasn't even raised in, but Hopi culture. The women are given dolls to learn how to communicate, to learn the culture. And so bringing that to me is just my sisters growing up, we did origami, we cut paper. And so that's what they represent, each woman. And other images, I have them torn away from the group, and that is to represent the missing women. I'm gonna hand the mic over to anyone. Do you guys have any questions on the panel?
You take it through the tour first.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
And so we have these two pieces. One is like, I'm going for more of like a poster, Russian, like a propaganda poster, but for the right cause, and the other one is draw this in your style, which like was a big thing with Sailor Moon, who was a woman, and so I drew her in her furs and her shells and a headband, and
So the big.
so the Romans. Yeah, I don't know what else to talk about.
Figure the next.
Go to the next slide. And so these are just other pieces. And so the one on the, I don't know if it's your right, the one that looks like denim was the initial digital sketch. And my painting didn't come out as well as my digital. And then the one here in the orange is representing the turquoise and my Southwest cultures, also banding together on this movement. This is one of the first pieces I've ever done, and I gave it to my niece, and I don't know if she still has it. But she was really big into this, and I don't know, she always asked me for help and things. And so then we have over here on the other one, which is a quick sketch of the woman holding her arm up, and she's tussled, her hair is unkept, her bandana is off and coming loose. And she's willing to fight. And yeah, if anyone has questions.
Here. Do we want to ask the audience if they have questions?
Do you have any questions about any of these pieces? I can always go back to them.
Any questions?
To purchase and inform.
Questions so people could hear.
I was just asked if there was anything available for purchase, so currently not. I kind of feel weird like selling it, but then I was also like always been in my mind. So this piece was a commissioned piece, and then this one on the larger image was a piece I'd done for a gallery exhibition, and I ended up splitting any profit I got with my model, and it really helped her out because she's been struggling on her last couple years of her MFA. So.
I think you just, I just had a comment. Just really powerful, but very like heavy. So when you mentioned at the beginning, the second slide was just, there's just little pieces of just the origami and how to do. You tuck that into the art, like it just a lot of that is super powerful. I think it just brings awareness of, to me, when I see that is already, right, like origami, like you have it as such a beautiful memory and the worry that comes from that, but it's in all of these pieces that you have with it in there is just something that just kind of pops in it. It's really powerful, but very like, ooh, kind of took my breath away a little bit.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comment, the audience. If we could go back to the previous slide. Oh, my name is Lahoma Double Runner. The image on the right, I couldn't help but notice it reminds me of Patsy. On the profile, it looks like Patsy.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Is there any online?
I was just asking, did you want to state your comment again before?
Oh,
your name?
yep, I'm Kat Studo. I was just asking if any of the images were available for purchase, or I would add to that, is there a way to support you in your artwork?
I guess I'm gonna speak loud.
Coming. You give the politician nod while you get the mic, yeah, or the artist nod.
The artist notes. So I mostly do things on Instagram at DA_bone07. Again, that is DA_bone07. I follow the Work Hard podcast, Instagram, Facebook. And if you need to get a hold of me, Robin, Emily, Patsy, boom. They just sent an email to me, so that's how I got mostly involved with this. I've been working loosely with them for the past couple of years now. And But that's the easiest way, and then I also have a website, artofanongenius.com. That, is another way to get in contact with me, and I've been doing art sales, I've been doing solo exhibitions, group exhibitions, all around Washington State. Yeah.
Facebook, we have Amelia George just says, good work, Lee. We get a comment online. Can you tell us a little bit about your other art that you use and you do, because you are our composer for our podcast. So anytime we do an episode, like we show your art or like we showcase what you do. And I do know that he does all kinds of art, not just MMIWP art, but could you talk about some of the other art forms and art that you do?
It's a very heavy question. So I am primarily a painter, graphic designer, illustrator. I was getting heavy into cooking for a while. I played piano, do music composition every now and then. It's getting less and less lately, but there's a picture going on. Candid picture. I just froze. What else? Other art I do, music composition, baking primarily when it was in cooking. Lost again. Pizza is probably one of the best things I know how to cook.
Do you sing?
I karaoke. I'm not very good at it. I don't think I have a very good voice. But yeah, I karaoke. I sing my heart out when I sing, but
So how would somebody like a youth that's interested in art, what advice would you have for maybe some young native artists out there?
so this one's kind of easy question, but it's mostly just practice. I work a lot with my niece. She's gravitated art, so does my nephew, so much, and it's amazing to like just how much they can pick up and learn, and just from asking me questions while I'm painting. And they're just like, how do you do that? I was like, well, this is, let's break it down. These are the fundamentals. This is what I do. I break down the form, I look at shape, I look at value, and then I get to color. But most of it is breaking down that into the fundamentals of what it is you want to paint and what it is you want to draw. So my niece, she's heavily influenced by anime, she's heavily influenced by American comics. And that's largely due to my brother and her sister, who are just so amazing artists in themselves that she's just been able to pick up everything. But for everyone else in general, it's just practice, practice, practice. Doesn't matter if it's bad, because every time you make a mistake, you're learning from it.
So I just wanted to add, while we're having this discussion, that I also just want to think about our family members that are in prisons, that are incarcerated, because of the length of time that they might be in prison. They begin gravitating toward the arts. And I know that in the prisons that art can be available. And I've seen some artwork come out of there that's beautiful, after people have made changes. And of course, there's still struggles even when they come out of prison as well. But I know that there are some earrings that I received from a former inmate depicting MMIW women, and it's all beaded. And these are small beads, very small beads. And I knew it took time, and the other work that's been done also, because they can make big medallions, but it's with the small beads. So it took time, and they also have to depend on the supplies that come in too. So I just think about our family members that are part of the prison system or the jail system, whatever it may be. And for whatever reason, I just think that it's an outlet for individuals as well. I appreciate your sharing with us, Lee. Glad we got to meet here.
Yeah, I think even this aspect of access to supplies is important part about young artists. Yesterday, we got a message that this Yakima youth was out of pencils. So I won't share their name for their privacy, but they had, their mother had said, they were sitting at a table and saying, I wish I could draw. And I'm like, well, why don't you draw? And they said, I'm out of supplies. And this individual is in high school, and my husband went and picked them up supplies, and then we got home after a long track meet, feeding the kids. And then we forgot, like, we pulled into our driveway and we forgot to get the pencils. And it's one of those things where you have 3 kids that are 13 and under, and you kind of lose track of things. And I said, we have to go get him those supplies. He's been waiting for them. And so we dropped them off, and he just had the biggest smile. And he's not somebody that smiles very easily. And so I was like, I got to see his full teeth. That was like the thing that I've been thinking about the past 24 hours since last night. And I think of how some of those simple acts of supporting our young artists, or even people that are having artistic expression, or Robin has talked about women empowerment pieces that her niece does. And I think about how us in the community like can support those efforts, even if it's just getting supplies and dropping them off. And at the very highest level, it seems very simple, but it results in a gift and supporting that gift. And I appreciate your words about what we can do with the youth. And I also want to ask another question about what advice would you give to those artists that are just kind of not really sharing their art yet? Not certain about what you talked about, commissioning a piece. Like, what does that mean? What would that mean to somebody that's just starting out? How that works? What insight can you give to those emerging artists?
When it comes to commissioning a piece, it's very awkward. I'm not very confident at all. So my niece comes to me and asks me this question, like, someone wants to buy my art, how much should I sell it for? And I give her, big name artists that her work reflects. And so like, there's this large painting in my brother's house right now of a cowgirl, a native cowgirl. And she has this pistol, she has this hat, and I don't like how this name is eluding me, but Fritz Shoulder. It's very reminiscent of Fritz Shoulder, and she's like, well, how much should I sell this for? Because someone wants to buy it. And I'm like, at least 500, but you can probably easily get a couple thousand from it. If anyone is a collector and they see this, they're gonna see that this is something that's really amazing. When it comes to other emerging artists, I've been doing these art markets, and people are just like, I don't know how much to sell my art for. And I was like, I used to sell art on envelopes. I used to draw on envelopes. I was homeless. I was near homeless, and then here I was drawing on envelopes, $5 an envelope. It's nothing, but that's the next meal. That's the coffee. That's a bottle of water. That's, it starts out small, and then later on, people are just going to notice, and people are going to want to pay you more. It's just really weird, because like my last couple of commissions, it's been I give them a price, and they're just like, I'm going to give you an extra 100. I'm going to give you an extra 50. Like it's really weird to think about. Like, or when I sold the other piece of my step niece, it got sold higher, or the man paid a lot more for it. And it's at Gonzaga University now in collections, and it's weird to think like I'm selling it for this much and someone wants to pay a lot more for it. And it's that kind of support for me, at least, is like I'm trying to, that's definitely in my niece, is just like, you can sell it for whatever you want, but sometimes someone's gonna want to pay more, and that's just gonna keep you going.
I have a question. So I'm always curious about the inner workings of like process or feedback a lot of the times, and how that influences you, or if that's important to you, because I know for some artists it's not, for some it's a lot. I know that one of my favorite academics to read is Yogi Alfred, and he did this whole speech and lecture about like native. He was talking about academics, but I feel like this could go for artists as well. It's like, sure, you could leave and go to school in another state, or you could go to school close to your community. But what kind of kept him grounded was that he kept going back to his community, even though he was in flux between getting a degree from like a prestigious university. But that he felt like that being grounded and being committed to his community and like getting their live feedback on what he's doing. Because he writes a lot of like critical pieces and his community will read it and then they will actually tell him themselves kind of what they thought about it. And I'm wondering, do you experience anything like that? Like, because I know you come back and forth, like you're here for to support your niece and nephew, who are also my niece and nephew. And just to put a plug in that they have a flute show tonight at the Toppers Community Center. And so they are musicians and artists just like we. And but when you come back or when you're online, do you ever get any like feedback that really influences you, or like are there changes, or do you not care about anybody's comments or anything like that?
I try not to care about it most of the time, but there's the feedback I get most from about any of my art is my niece. Sorry to keep talking about her, but she is ambitious. She is a go-getter. She is way more talented than I'll probably ever be. But she'll look at my work and she'll be like, it should be this color. You should change this. So when I was having a solo show and I was, scrounging to painting a last piece, she was just like, I think you're done. You're gonna screw it up. And so like she watches me paint. She watches me paint a lot, and she knows she has that mind, that foresight. So I take a lot of her into my mind, and then also my grandma's when they were here, when they were with us. My grandma, the one I spent the most time with, was a beater. She was always laughing at me because I never had any patience. I would draw something, I draw it really quick, and then she's like, that looks good, but we need it to look better, because like she was the one who was gonna beat it. She would beat the eagles, she would beat the salmon, she would beat the roses, she would beat anything I drew for her, she would beat it. And so it was really nice for her to have a nice drawing rather than a drawing. Something that was better than me wasting my time. Or not wasting, but like making just going haphazard. And then I had my other grandmas, my late grandma Marlene, and who was an educator and a prominent person in Gopi land. She was really astounded because all of the things that I would paint in my dreams, she would be like, how are you learning this? Or who told you, who taught you these things? And I'm like, they come from my dreams, and I show them to you first because it's a culture that I'm not invested in, or not invested, but like I wasn't initiated. I wasn't brought up this way. And so, but she would verify that these things that I paint, it comes from there. And then my other grandma, she was very interested. She always supported my art. Grew up with a gallon box full of crayons. So she was always there. She kept my drawings from when I was a kid, which was really weird. So when I was last there for my family, when she left, it was I saw like a UFO that I drew, and I'm just like, I drew that when I was like 6. And so like but she was always telling me to keep going, to keep at this, because it's what I can do is amazing. It's my superpower. So, and that's also something like all of us as natives and as creators, that's what we do. That's what we've grown up doing, whether it be beadwork, sewing, making nets, crafting. That's what we do.
Did you have someone, Patsy?
I just wanted to say, for the audience that are listening to us here, I also just want to say that I work with a group of students around the state with middle school students with a team of artists from around the state, with some of the coastal tribes, as well as Yakima artists too. So we provide training and education for Native students who are at the middle school level and their teachers. And so we're also training the teachers to be able to teach the students about their heritage, their background, their identity, and also the art that comes from their community. As a matter of fact, we just finished up a session at the Hera Middle School with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and I just finished up one here at Tribal School this past week. So the art classes we had in Hera was to teach the students about the cedar. And we had artists coming in from the Jamestown Sklallam tribe to share about working with cedar, because when we have our summer camps, we're teaching them all kinds of art, not just, over here it might be wampus, and over there it might be more cedar or canoes or games, stick game songs as well. They're learning about stick game songs. So that opportunity is available, and it's based on the school's decision to participate or not. But I know we've had Toppy School District that's participated, Wapato, White Swan, and the tribal school that have participated in these programs. This summer, we'll be having a teacher forum, about a week-long teacher education program for teachers who are working with Native students around the state. And so when you were talking, Lee, that's what I was thinking about. What a wonderful artist you are. I want to learn more from you, because we want to learn from one another. And as you were talking, it made me think about Emily's husband. He posts, on Facebook, and I don't really respond to Facebook, but I just read, and people know that I now do that. I never used to do Facebook, and I was told one day by a former teacher I worked with, Christian Guy, she said, I'm going to make a Facebook page for you, so you will communicate with us. So I've gone one step, and I only read, but I see what he does, and I'm curious about what kind of dialogue goes on in your home with your husband doing all of this artwork. And I'm thinking, I'm wondering what Emily's saying, and what the kind of conversations they're having about, his creative nature as well. And as we shared earlier, he's the one that created the logo, for our war cry. So, and I'm always wondering, of course I know him, but I don't know him. So I'm curious about the dialogue and the creative role that he's playing within your family.
Yeah, there's quite a range. Sometimes we get like really upset about something, like you should make this as a response. That would be specific to dam removal, the one image I'm talking about. So he made this one piece, and I was like, you should make something with a salmon, and it's like its tail. People that work with salmon know how powerful they are. And even they just have to do fish workups. Like I thought, oh, that looks easy. They're just doing that. I could go, oh my gosh, it was like you're all wet, and then you don't know how they weigh them, and they're all fast. Anyway, salmon are very powerful. Fishers know that, people that work with fish know that. And I was like, you should have it kicking off the dam and put decolonize and decommission. And in my mind, it looked very basic, but when I saw what he created from that, and he kind of course, has artistic license with some of that, he comes up with it. And we never really know where it's going to end up or what it's going to be, but and some of the pieces aren't shared. And then another range, I wrote a case study that's forthcoming on MMIP, and I saw this image that he created with this woman's hand in the air. And I don't know what it was for, but I had told him a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, I'm going to use that for my MMIP work. So I had him gift it to me. So I guess that's what kind of happens sometimes in that role and aspect. But I think it is a range. And I also think back to what Lee was sharing about his grandmother, and there's still pieces that my great grandmother, Elsie Cree Pinkham, drew that my mom has. And there's still pieces that my mom even drew and has. And some of the beadwork that I make, she drew. And so people automatically think that it's her work because they can recognize her drawings. And And I'll explain, well, no, she drew it, but I beaded it. And she's still with us and she's still here. She made this beaded pin that's under my shirt now, but there's different items that she drew that I just don't want to make because I just want to keep her drawings. I love that aspect of just seeing it drawn out. And I'll just look at them and think about her artistic ability and that range. And I like seeing things in all forms, I guess, too. And so I guess to answer your question about John and JD is I get to see the full process. Right now he's making leather bags. And so before I came, it was pound, pound, pound. He's just pounding things and the zippers going and things are being sewn. And it looks like a crazy process to me. It looks like I'm in Willy Wonka factory because they're all colorful, like bright pink and purple and different colors are flying around, it seems like, and I don't know how it becomes a purse, quite frankly. Some of them, and I'm in line, so I don't always get everything. People assume like, oh, he must have that. I'm like, no, I'm still in line. He said I have to wait until these like 10 orders are done, even before I can think about getting it. So that is one aspect in one piece. He does get commissioned for artwork by other organizations specific to MMIP. Puyallup Tribe had asked him to draw something regarding the MMIW and special that they were going to have when they had their powwow. And he had said, well, what should it be? What do you think it should be? And we had dialogued, and I said, I really love the aspect of how we communicated using fire and smoke. And this idea now that about how much voice is being brought to MMIW, MMIP. And so he took that kind of dialogue and discussion and he added to it because he's an archaeologist and historian, has a lot of historical knowledge. And he created a piece where a woman is making the message that in the smoke signal says MMIW. And you know, they gave those blankets away during their special that they had held at their powwow. And then he later found out that they had that blanket up in tribal council offices. And again, I think it just speaks to the power of art being able to embody and hold so much. Some of which that can't even fully be said, that's more just felt. I see we are getting around to the 1 hour mark, which we try to keep it. So I'm going to go to our co-hosts and artists for our last little closing remarks. If there's, and I'll check with our producer to see if there's any additional comments or questions. Again, we want to make this MMIW art discussion an ongoing piece. So if there's art that you would recommend to us in the audience, or online, just let us know and we'll definitely look into it.
Yes, and I just want to say we're getting ready to do our next annual report to the legislature. And so we'll be looking for artwork again. So if any of you have artwork you'd like us to be considered for our report, and also from the artwork from the report, you can go online at the Attorney General's office and view the website under task forces, and under task forces it will say missing and murdered Indigenous women and people. So it's Attorney General's office, you'll find task forces, scroll down to missing and murdered Indigenous women and people. And so if any of you have any artwork you would like to be considered, please submit that to Robin or Emily.
Also, our website has a resource page, and so we have a direct link to this report and the site that she's speaking about. Before we close, I wanted to speak again a little bit more about our guests and kind of how we came together for War Cry, which I want to say even just crafting the name was very artistic because it definitely held a lot of different aspects of what we're talking about. If you think about War Cry, you know, I come from, of course, the Comanche people. You know, War Cry would mean something different than, say, like a tribe who's lost a lot of people. You know, all tribes have lost a lot of people, but I know that at least Comanches, they're very they liked more, and so they would have a lot of conflicts. So I felt like it spoke to different aspects of who we are as natives and as tribal people, indigenous people. And you could either be crying because of war, or you could have a war cry because you're gonna go forward. So I thought the name was actually artistic to begin with. And I felt really privileged that our whole podcast has been able to be influenced by artists. So of course we have JD's artwork as the logo. I was recently in a business class and they were looking at logos, and so I put our logo in front. They were like, oh yeah, this looks like a discussion, this looks like a podcast. And I was like, it is, you know, so like they guessed like right on, and they're like, oh yeah, it kind of looks like MMIW, MMIP because of the red, and you know, I was like, wow, that's right on. So it's like very on point, you know, as a logo. And then also working with Lee was, you know, as he talks about doing commissions, and I could see the impatience, but I also appreciated it because at the time we were like, okay, we have this idea for a podcast, it's getting all together really fast, you know, and so we were getting episodes together, we were getting guests, but we're like, oh, we need like a music intro, we need different kind of music that we can set to it. And Lee was the only person I could think of, he's the only person that came to mind who I knew was making music. And who understood like the technical aspects. That's something he doesn't always talk about, like how digitally inclined he is. So a lot of his artwork is in the digital realm as well. So some of it might not even be on paper. You know, a lot of it is like in a cloud or it's like online somewhere. And if you ever look at his page, you'll see that it shows the whole outline and from step to step, how it started from a concept all the way to the final piece. And so he's a very versatile person, but I came to him, I was like, Lee, we need some music. And he was like, okay, well, what is it about? And, you know, he goes, okay, I can have it done in a couple of days. I was like, yay, you know, because I was like, that's what I need. We need it like right now. And he was very negotiable. I was like, we don't have a lot of money. It's like, we're not planning to make money from this. We just want to get it out. Can we give you this X number of money and like this item? And he was like, that's fine, I'll do that. And so he actually gave us a few pieces. And so it was just a pleasure working with Lee, and you know, I've known Lee for probably 20 years, and he's always been very willing to work with people and try to see their vision as well. So and that's something that, you know, listening to Emily talk about like do this, you know, it's like I live with artists, you know, my father was also an artist, and so to be able to speak to an artist and have them see kind of what you're seeing, because it's like, I can't do that. Like, you know, I can see something, but it's like, I wouldn't be able to put it down. I wouldn't be able to do that. So I always appreciate artists because they can take like what's in your mind and actually put it out there. And Lee definitely did that. And we had talked about like further episodes and if we needed more music, and he was always willing to work with us with that. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. And it was really good to actually see the different parts of our podcast, people to actually meet in person. Because again, we started this during COVID. And so we actually had never done, this is probably like our third episode we've done as a group in person. And so it's really nice to get the human part of it. Do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you guys for inviting me here, because it was just kind of on a whim. Robin's like, you're gonna be in town. I'm like, yeah, I'll be in town. He's like, oh, send me this. I'm like, okay, I'm really busy, but let's get this done. So I got into town last night around 1:30 in the morning, finally sent her the email with all these images and told her, like, I'm gonna try and scrub through my hard drive and see if I have any more. This morning, but you know, I came here with work. I'm painting in my off time while I'm here, and then gonna be painting until I continue on my journey. But thank you all. I appreciate you guys lots. That Starbucks gift cards you all gave me. Once upon a time, when to use.
Do you have any other questions from the audience? If they want to make any comments or questions? Any art pieces? Yes, I'll come to you.
I have a question for Lee.
Can you say your name?
My name is Ella Adams. I had a question. I have two questions for Lee. So one, you're not from here. And then two, have you, kind of circling back around to what they said, have you ever considered like teaching? Because you do like so much artistic things. Did you ever consider like teaching art?
So I actually have taught a couple classes before. A couple of years ago, when I was sleeping on my brother and my sister-in-law's couch, I applied for a position at Camp Chaparral, and it was really funny. I was just supposed to be a camp counselor. Little did I know, like everything was just gonna hit the fire. We lost a cook, we lost a teacher, and there was an incident that happened while at camp. And during that time, it was really amazing to work with kids of all various ages from, I think the earliest that they get is like 6, all the way up till 13. And it was really weird because they're just like, I thought you were just supposed to babysit us and take us from class to class and do this, but you're cooking now? Can you teach us how to cook? And then it was, okay, yeah, so then, this is how you make fry bread, this is how you do this. And then it was also, oh, Lee, we need a teacher. Well, you went to college. I'm like, oh yeah, I did. Is there any, can you teach anything about what you do? I was like, well, I'm an artist. So I was working with the kids, and like one of the biggest projects that we had that I kept in each tier of students was medicine cabinet. Finding things or trying to remember things that we hold dear to ourselves, because after my grandma left, I got her ring, her turquoise and silver ring, and like that's something that I cherish and I'm going to cherish for the rest of my life. And so like just trying to teach these kids, like there's something that in your lives that we could all bring together and work together with. And I'm going to teach you how to try and draw that, or try to, create what you want to create in your mind's eye. Let's get it on paper. And then like in the off times, kids were just running to me, like, because I had a backpack full of arts, my own art supplies. And they're like, you got the good stuff. You got the Sharpies, you got the pencils that actually work, you got. And then like we just sit around at camp, like during lunch or whatever on our free time, and we would just draw on our frisbees, we would draw on our shirts, we would draw on our like random pieces of paper. And they were just like, how do you know how to do this? I'm like, this is how we look at things, or this is how I look at things. You may look at them differently, but let's figure out where we meet in the middle. So I have taught a couple classes. I've done adult classes in Vancouver when I was living there. I'm not originally from Yakima. I was born in Glendale, Arizona. My parents met when their parents are relocated to California. And so there's that, but I am enrolled Yakima. My grandfather is Lee Umtouch, named after Lee. Umtouches have been a great part of the Yakima Nation, from Umtouch Village all the way to what we have now. There's a school named after us, which I really thought was really weird. And then, but yeah, and then my grandma, she was all over the place. She grew up in Glenwood, but she rests in Celilo. She was a woman of the river. She was a woman of the mountains. And so like I learned a lot from her. But I don't know, my last name, my surname Sikakwaptiwa is Hopi. And so there's a lot of intersect there, even though we're supposed to be a matrilineal society. Every time I go down to Katsumobile, all of my others, like aunts and uncles, sisters and brothers, just like, you're one of us. And I'm like, what does that mean? It's like just the way that you are, like there's just something about it, and like it's just really weird. They have a very weird but very cool way of interacting with people, I noticed. Yeah, unique. But yeah, I'm enrolled. Yeah, I am from here. I went to Granger High School. I graduated from the same high school my grandpa graduated from.
Anybody else?
I have a couple more.
Okay.
My closing comments. In case there's one that comes in on Facebook. Yeah, so part of this MMIP symposium is also eventually going to, I think, include a exhibit at the Yakama Nation Museum that the Yakama Nation Behavioral Health is gonna do. I'm not completely sure what is fully gonna be a part of that, but that should be coming out at some point. Which kind of speaks to the power of like artistic expression and what we want to see. And I think my co-host and our guest here today for like bringing about the different range of topics that come up with this. The title of our podcast connects to the title of a case study that I wrote called War Cry, which anybody that writes knows that you have so many different rounds of edits that come through. And I think I was like on the 5th round of edit and my 5th title, which my editor was very kind and kept allowing me to change and adjust it. But it wasn't fully encapsulating what I wanted to depict. And so War Cry, when I wrote that out, it was, and I think Robin for highlighting it in her closing remarks, is this balance of strength and vulnerability. Because I felt very strong sometimes when I was writing, but I felt very vulnerable in other times when I was writing. And I think it also lends itself to this conversation as well, about how you can feel very strong at some points, you can feel also very vulnerable. And the reason I wrote the case study with the Evergreen State College is because they are open source, meaning you don't have to have a subscription to access it. And, but I realized something in that I was craving more conversation, that in each part that I was writing, I wanted to hear from fellow Yakama members. And so after Robin had interviewed me for a different podcast that she co-hosts, we just started kind of this dialogue, like, well, what happened if we did our own? Like, we're just there. I mean, I guess there's not enough toilet paper to fight over in the pandemic, that we just needed to like launch a podcast, but and it's there for anybody to take what they need from it. This title and this feeling and this emotion isn't just unique just to one person or a few people. It is something that, you know, our ancestors went through. It is something that depicts the history of this land. So I just wanted to kind of lend a spotlight to that community conversation piece and the title. Ready for outro? Okay.
Yep.
All right, now we do the outro. This is where I give all the specifics, the credits. We are an Indigenous-led podcast surviving under the duress of colonization and intergenerational trauma towards self-determination. If at any point during this session you need culturally appropriate advocacy or support, please contact Strong Hearts Native Helpline. That is 1-844-7-NATIVE, 1-844-762-8483, or you can chat online at strongheartshelpline.org. They do, they're just a great resource. Once again, I'm Emily Washings, and thank you to our co-hosts, Patricia Whitefoot and Robin Peabishy, and our guest, Lee Sika-Kwaktuwa. This episode is edited and produced by Robin Peabishy of Peabishy Studio. Music by Lee Sika-Kwaktuwa. Logo and shirts by John Olney Schellenberger, where you can get our merch on his website, Native Anthro, or ours as well. And thank you to our live audience and our online audience. Please like, subscribe, or leave a comment. It really helps us out. And our producer notes will also link in Lee's contact information and social media. Thank you.